Hey, professional. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but because of new and emerging technologies, and of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, businesses are increasingly trying to find a way to put their services online. That includes how they conduct their hiring processes. Therefore, virtual interviewing is becoming more and more popular. By the end of this video, you'll know how to conduct your next virtual interview with competitive advantage. If you're a person that thrives on tips, trends, and any motivation to help you in your career transition or just your personal growth, then definitely hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every month. So I recently received a call back and got some really good feedback from a virtual interview that I had last week. In addition, one of my clients from my 90-day Career Fix coaching program got a new job solely based on virtual interviewing. And this is in a time where many people have lost their jobs or just have given up hope in general of transitioning into a new career. But in this video, we'll walk through the techniques that'll help you to really convince your interviewer that you are the best candidate for the job. First, you want to make sure you're balancing that eye contact. And I'm going to be calling that virtual eye contact in purposes for this video. But first things first, a basic housekeeping tip, which is do not multitask. I get it. I mean, our brains are wired to do a million different things at once right now in this landscape of the internet and technological growth. But when you do that, employers can notice when you're not paying attention. So maybe you got an email that came in or some alert or some notification, and you might say to yourself, oh, let me click off of that really quick, or let me handle this really quick, or it just caught your attention. They can see that, and to show that you're not paying attention in an interview is just not good business, and that's the impression that they get left with. So it's easier to get distracted in doing these things online, but don't multitask. Anyway, so back to balancing your eye contact as a whole. You want to establish connection with the interviewer, which is super important because they are able to get your energy, get your vibe. You haven't shaken hands or anything like that. So they are going to use every single part of this interview to get a sense of who you are and to collect some kind of energy. So you definitely want to balance what you're looking at. So for one thing, you want to stare directly into the camera, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm using my laptop camera to record this video, but I'm looking at the camera. So you feel like I'm looking at you, I'm talking to you. But at the same time, you want to get your own data. You want to get your own feel for the interviewer. So you want to balance that. So as you're answering questions, you don't need to look at yourself. So look at the camera when you're answering questions so it can appeal that you are speaking directly to them. But every now and then, if you want to look down for a second just to get an idea of how they're responding, then you can do that. Take a second or half a second to just look down really quick like I just did. On the other hand, when they are asking you questions, then same thing, look down, look at them, get an idea of their background, their energy, and everything that they're bringing for that. So I'm just going to give you a quick example of balancing and looking at the camera and then what it looks like when you don't. So I'll ask the question, which is very common in interviews, and that is, why do you want to work here? So I might respond by saying, I want to work here because I personally believe in your mission, vision, and values as they align perfectly with my own, right? So I just did that looking directly in the camera as if I'm answering the interviewer if we were sitting in their office. On the contrast, if I do that by looking at my screen, that might look like this. I want to work here because of your mission, vision, and values, and they perfectly align with my own. You see the difference? So I'm looking off. I'm not looking at them. And it's again, we need all opportunities to really connect with the employer. So you want to make sure you balance your eye contact. The next thing you want to do is to make sure that your background shows a little bit of your personality. But first, a housekeeping tip. Don't have a distracting background. And if it's just you and your home, that's fine. I'm sure you're a smart person. You already know this, but I have to say it. I would not be a good career coach if I didn't say it. Don't have your laundry piled up in the back over here, or your dog running around, or something that's not appealing, because that's showing like, oh, I mean, like, we're on an interview. You couldn't step it up a notch to show professionalism. I could think that. Or a distracting background in terms of colors or cool gadgets or some kind of virtual video that you're doing. There's a time and a place for that, and the interview is not that. So basic housekeeping tip, don't have a distracting background. Anywho, think about what you want them to know about your personality. Again, you're doing everything on screen, and they're using all bits of data to make a decision about you. So what is the one thing about your personality that you want this interviewer to know? Think about what that is. Maybe it's that you're organized, or that you're sweet, or you're passionate. Take whatever that thing is, only work with one specific thing, and display a little bit of that in your background. So perhaps you have an interesting art piece, whether you did it or not, but it shows a bit of who you are, or show maybe your desk. If you want to really reiterate how organized you are, show yourself in something that you've organized, your like I said, your desk, or something else that just looks very neat and put together, if that's what you want them to know. But make sure that whatever you're using, that it doesn't take away from your message and what you're saying, and ultimately answering those questions. So for example, if you check out my last video about how I'm embracing the quarantine, and why you should too, you'll see a little bit of my personality in there. You'll see this cool picture that my sister had gotten me that's a little bit of sass. It's sassy, but also you'll see a quote on the wall, so that expresses like what I believe in, the things that I care about. So it tells you a bit of my personality. So think about that before you have your setup ready to go for your next interview, virtual interview. A couple of you might notice that you're receiving more and more virtual interview requests, and even think about those times that were outside of the COVID-19 pandemic. Is that you? Comment about it below and let me know about your experience and just your thoughts about it in general. So the next tip is to dress for the win. Starting with our basic housekeeping tip though, yes, dress like you're going into the actual interview in person. This isn't the time to slack. So even though you might say to yourself, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal, or they're not seeing me from the waist down, or what have you. No, you're going to take it up a notch and act like you're about to head out of your house, into your car, and into someone's office. So yes, dress like you're going to the interview in person. But moving on with that as our baseline, you want to go the extra mile and be extra sharp, as they used to say back in the day. I know my mother used to say that. My grandmother used to say that all the time when, I come out and I dress up or something. They say, "Ooh, you look sharp." Yes, I'm old school. We're going to take that and integrate that into these virtual interviews. Like I mentioned before, people tend to slack at this point. You want to be comfortable, not in a suit or what have you, but you should take it up a notch anyway. You want to give your A+. And again, it's about your competitive advantage. You don't want to be in a pool with other people that are going to say, well, I'm going to be comfortable for this because I have to sit in my house where I'm already comfortable to do this interview. You are not going to do that for your competitive advantage. And you might be saying, but Davina, why? Why does this matter? think about why we do it in the first place. When we show up to interviews or other places that are expecting a professional appearance, it's because it makes a statement. It's a visual representation of who you are and what people can expect from you. And you've already listed that in your resume. So now we're taking the words from on paper and putting it in visual form for this potential employer to say, this is how I show up. And that's why you want to take things to the next level. Remember, and I always say this as a marketer, you got to remember, I'm a marketer at heart, and that's how I approach these things. You are a walking billboard for yourself, and that means whether you're online or in person. So take it from me and dress for the win. And for all my introverts out there who might be uncomfortable in all forms of interviewing, make sure you check out my video, The Best Interview Tips for Introverts to Get Callbacks every time, to make sure that you're interview ready and not wanting to jump out of your skin. Final tip to give you competitive advantage in your virtual interviews is to show engagement. Starting with our basic housekeeping tip, don't be a robot. I get it. A lot of people in general are nervous when it comes to interviews, but as I mentioned before, they are looking for personality. They are gathering data about you in this small screen to determine if you would be a good fit for the company. So if you sit there and don't move and you don't move your eyes, it's not natural, and two, you appear uptight, and that'll make them think, okay, I know this is an interview, this can be a bit of a stressful situation, but is this how they handle stress? That's something to think about. So you don't want to just sit there and act like you're in trouble. That's what a lot of people do in interviews because they don't want to make a mistake, and I get that, but when you lock up like that, it's reminiscent of a child that is being scolded. So don't be a robot. But moving on from there, yes, in general, I am not negating that interviewing can be a nerve-wracking process, but you still have to step up your interesting factor within this virtual setting that we're in right now. So there's a couple of ways that you can show engagement within the interview. For one thing, use gestures that as you speak, that can be seen in the camera. So I was the captain of my high school speech team, so we were taught how to properly speak with our hands to express certain things, or I might be excited, so you might see me doing some of these even in my interviews. But use natural looking gestures that you would use as you were like talking to anybody, but also use gestures that can be seen in the camera. Like right now, I'm moving my hands. You don't know that. You can't see that at all. And we might have a tendency to do that, especially if you happen to be on a screen where you can't see yourself. You want to check all that out beforehand. So you want to make sure that your gestures, whatever it is, can be seen in camera. Another way that you can show engagement is to lean forward at certain points of the conversation. So just like I was saying earlier about balancing eye contact, perhaps when the interviewer is speaking, you can lean in a little more to get a little bit more intimate and just show that you are there with them, that you care about what they're saying. Another thing, and I laugh about this one, is having good posture. With all of us being at home, I have joked with some friends and some colleagues of how we might all come out of this with terrible posture because we're sitting at home. So comfort for you might be sitting like this, but I don't look interested and confident in the interview when I do that. Or it might be leaning like this or something like this. You might show up in one of these ways, but that's of course showing slacking that you too comfortable for the interview. But a couple of tips on that is just kind of like when you naturally suck your stomach in, it lifts you up a bit. Having your shoulders back and shoulders down will help you to have good posture in this space. And lastly, you can take notes. Have your notepad right there on your desk or table in a show, and they can see that you're taking notes about what they're saying. So those are some ways that you can show engagement in your virtual interview. So these are some simple enough techniques that you can easily implement before your next virtual interview to make sure you stand out from other applicants in this space. But ultimately, it is your responsibility to stand out and tell employers who you are, why your brand is important to their brand. But I'm thinking some people, and maybe that's you, maybe you need help conveying your successes to these potential employers. If so, make sure you download your free copy of the ebook, The Key Skills to Keep in Your Success Toolbox, to get you started. You can find the link below in the description. Also, get more interview tips and all things related to career transition by joining my Facebook group, From Stagnant Job to Ideal Career. So was this helpful for you? I certainly hope that it was. And if it was, make sure you let me know by commenting on this video, liking it, subscribing to my channel, and of course, sharing it with your friends or colleagues who you know really need a career transition. Looking forward to catching up with you next month.